Kaimi, we got Rebecca on the line. What do you want to ask her?
Going into that first deal and, you submit your LOI, what was it like when it was accepted and then to go from there to under contract?
Yeah, so after running around with crazy happiness and coming off of cloud nine, then finally, yes, it's like, oh gosh, okay, I'm going to be in control of all these people's money. And again, that's where I leaned on the experience of my partner who had already done it a number of times before me. So I also know that I am a person of integrity and transparency, and that I was definitely going to do my very best. So I know my best has done me well in the past, and that I had every intention to do well for these people and wouldn't let this thing fail.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. I'm very excited for today's show. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes. We've got two great guests on the line with us. We got Rebecca Moore sitting in the experienced investor seat today, and Kaimi Konaaihele in our aspiring investor seat. Here we go. So as typical, we put our aspiring investor on hold for a little bit and bring our experienced investor to the front. So Rebecca, how you doing today?
I am great. How are you?
Doing really well. It was great meeting you at the VSV Con a couple weeks back.
Likewise.
Yeah, actually, it's been a full month, hasn't it?
It has. Yes, it has, actually.
Yeah. So,
almost to the date.
Yeah, well, great meeting you and glad we connected. Glad we got you on the show today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so as far as the syndication world, when I started out, my husband and I, we thought we had it pretty good, and we did. I am a PhD psychologist, and he was a naval officer, active duty at the time.
Nice.
And we had bought houses in different places where he was stationed. And so we thought, all right, we're on our way to a pretty good retirement. And yet it just didn't sort of seem like enough. We knew that I would be working and working and working to who knows how long. And so we had these three houses, wondering what we were going to do with them. And we went to a real estate expo and learned about syndicating apartment buildings. And we thought, what a great way to take our single family homes and put them all under one roof. Yeah. Where they're taken care of, and maybe we can have some cash flow. So I signed up with a mentor, and from San Diego, where we were stationed at that time, I started to go back and forth from Dallas, where the mentor was, learning about syndications. And so that's how I got started.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because, I was also active duty for a while, and that was kind of how I got my start. I think a lot of military folks do the same thing. It's kind of the easy button to start real estate investing. Is the military is going to move you. You try to buy a house, you move again in 1 to 3 years, and you turn it into a rental. So like that. Pick up where you were. That's how you got into syndication. How do things go from there?
Okay. Well, so it was a lot of work to make that leap, going back and forth from Dallas. But as I did that almost every other month, because there would always be an event with our group, I would learn the market. I learned for the very first time about apartments themselves, a C-class apartment, what a value add is for apartments. I had no idea. So it was a lot of learning, but by showing up and attending and being with all these other potential investors and friends and sponsors, I was able to find a partner. And that partner then really helped me dive into the numbers and learn how to underwrite and to really look closely at a deal.
Yeah, and I think that's important. You hit the nail on the head with the showing up part. And
Mhm.
since you said your husband was Navy, I had an old boss that was Navy that used to always tell everybody, if you can show up in the right place at the right time, and then a military thing in the right uniform, he's like, that's 90% of success, And I don't think I agreed with him that was 90% of success, but I think in this business, it's definitely part of it. You show up, keep showing up day after day, and you eventually learn it. So yeah, found a partner, you learned the skills, learned the trade. How did it go from there?
Okay, so talk about showing up.
Mhm,
I was reliable with my partner.
mhm,
I mean, every time he called, we were on the phone, we were underwriting together. I showed up to tour any of the apartments, even though they might be in Dallas.
mhm.
And so took me about a year and a half, but then finally we landed a really great 94 unit in Hurst, Texas,
Mhm.
that it was a mom and pop, and they sold, and it ended up just to be an amazing investment.
Awesome. And where
Yes,
is Hearst?
it is right smack dab sort of between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Okay. Okay. So perfect. Somewhere in that metroplex. And what made this, I mean, besides mom and pop, I think that's kind of what a lot of people are trying to get, mom and pop properties, just regular people who own it, not professional investors. They tend to leave a lot of meat on the bone. But what specifically made this such a good investment?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So, number one, it was in a wonderful school district. A
Mhm,
lot of people wanted to live there. It had an elementary school right
mhm,
next to it. It had a great combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. The 3
mhm,
bedrooms were also townhouses. So,
mhm.
you've got something for everybody, for the
Yeah.
single person as well as the family.
Mhm.
It was also an all bills paid place,
Yeah.
the only one within a 5-mile range. And
Mhm.
so therefore, those people who prefer to pay all one bill rather than paying out utilities, that was that one place that they could be in this really good school district that they could live. So those are some of the overarching big things that made it a great investment.
Mhm. Yeah. So did you end up putting the bills back to the tenants like a lot of people do?
We did not,
Okay.
because that was a great niche.
Mhm,
Also, the rents were so low, below
mhm,
market at the time, that just increasing the rents there was
mhm.
the value play. And of
Nice.
course, upgrading each of the interiors.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah. And isn't true of all mom and pops, but most of the properties I've seen that qualify as kind of the mom and pop things, they always end up being value adds. And I think, once again, very much generalizing. It's not true for everybody, but a lot of the mom and pops, when they get down to these large capital expenses or renovations, just don't have the capital to do it. And that tends to be why a lot of them sell it. So they're looking at, a 6-figure, very, very large bill to do renovations. And they're just like, it's not in the budget. So cash out. Yeah.
That was exactly the story here, because we were able to buy it and infuse that cash into making the property look better and the
Mhm.
inside look better. That was definitely a way to be able to raise rents and really upgrade this place and make it a better community than they had already left it.
And when did you guys buy this one?
This was 2017.
Okay. Do you still own it or did you sell it already?
Just sold it December of 21.
Oh, perfect timing.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that might have been the absolute peak of the market, but maybe early 2022 would have been peak. But I mean, you can never really time that stuff. So
That's okay. Yeah, we
yeah,
bought it for about 5 million and
Mhm.
sold it for over 10 million.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
double up on the price there. And I'm sure all of your investors were very happy with it.
very pleased.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm so
Awesome.
glad that I could do that for them, as well as giving the residents there a
Mhm.
nice place to live.
Nice, nice. That sounds like an awesome deal. Love it. Now, what have you guys done since then?
Well, since then, we've done quite a bit.
Yep.
We have more properties here in Dallas, and we have, let's see, 5 properties now down in Houston. So we've stuck with the Dallas and
Mhm.
the Houston areas as our market.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. I think they're both really strong markets, both very large cities. And so it's I'm not going to say easy. That word almost came out of my mouth. There's a lot more there. There's a lot more inventory, and it's a good place to set up shop.
Absolutely. Well, again, I feel really blessed that we were able to learn about syndications back. I started in 2014. And that was really right after syndications became a thing for the average Joe, let's say, because that started in 2012. 2014, I come into the market here at Dallas as it's beginning to boom. Jobs, population growth, people moving to the Sun Belt, and then most recently Houston with its tremendous job growth as well.
Yeah. And I like Houston as a market. I like Dallas as a market. We've done one syndication in Houston, should be closing on another one soon. It's kind of a small JV property, but I think both metros are solid and going to do well long term. So that's what I look for, long term. So, well, awesome. Usually I ask people to talk about a property. We've already talked about that. So let's move on to kind of next point. And that's, why do you do this? So what's your big burning why?
My burning desire at the very beginning was a scarcity mentality. I grew up at very humble means, and the fear of poverty and not being able to get anywhere was the beginning. But after basically first getting that first deal, it became much more of a giving back to my investors, actually, and helping people to get out of that. If they had a scarcity mentality, if they needed to get that boost in their retirement, I had the ability now to help others get out of, or actually I should say retain or get a better retirement later on. And I've been able to do that on a larger scale, while at the same time being able to give residents a nice place to live. So it's more of a self-actualization that is occurring. And that brings me a tremendous joy. And not only that, my family members invest with me now as well. So I'm giving everybody this ability to have a better life later on.
Yeah.
So that feels amazing.
While you were talking, I think I just connected some dots. The company's called Starboard Equity, and your husband's in the Navy.
Yes, sir.
So why Starboard?
Because the starboard ship, or the starboard vessel, yes, is the privileged vessel. It has the right of way. And so therefore, those who invest with us have the right of way. We want to give them the privilege of having the investment done right.
I love it.
Very good, Brian.
Yeah,
great.
naval term. I mean, I retired about 2 years ago, and if I was still active duty, I probably would have recognized it immediately. It only took 15 minutes into the podcast for me to realize that. So I'm getting slow in my old age, but well, that's cool too. I love it. I love it. Starboard ship has the right of way. So well, cool. So how about this last question for you before we start talking with Kaimi? What's coming up next?
Well, I do have on my website an ebook about how people can begin to close that gap between their retirement now and their dream retirement, because that again is part of my why. And so getting the word out is very important to me. I want people to not feel the scarcity that I've had in life, and see that there can be a different way.
Awesome. Well, we're going to put a link to that in the show notes. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be interested in that. So for the listeners who are interested, check out the show notes. We'll have a link to their website, and just go ahead, click that link and make it super easy. So, well, that said, I'm going to transition here, and Kaimi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, and do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. Well, I'm from Maui, born and raised in Hawaii. I'm equal parts beach boy, soccer player, cowboy, and 100% part Hawaiian.
Nice.
Yeah. So I went to college prep school here on Maui, and that sort of sealed my fate for a while. I was entrenched in that plan for the common man, get a degree, get a job, work job, retire, die. That was where I was at for a good part of my life. About 20 years ago, I began my dream job. I was living and working on one of the bigger cattle ranches here on Maui. I grew up on this ranch, so it was a coming home for me. What I didn't know at the time, what I should say is what I was not aware of, is my dream job was still a job. I was trading my time for money, living a limited life, and I was in that societal norm that I just wasn't aware of. I didn't know there were other things better. I was there for nearly 2 decades, and in that time, I ascended to the highest position I could attain there, short of being the actual owner, who was my good friend. And he wasn't about to give me the ranch or sell it to me. So that was kind of the top. I couldn't go anywhere from there. And, along the way, I always had this feeling, sort of like what Rebecca was saying. There was something I felt I needed more. I felt like there was this glass ceiling or something there I couldn't see, but I could definitely feel. It was like holding me back, holding me down, just really keeping me in place. But I could never really identify it. It was just like this festering that eventually became this frustration and this discontent. So, it was like a paradox. Here I am in one of the most beautiful places in the world, getting paid to be there, to do what I love, and I'm miserable, So something had to give. And, it was at that point, and I went through a tumultuous period in my life. I'll skip over all those details for brevity here, and just say that's where I began a quest of some self-development, and inevitably that led to entrepreneurship. The two of those seem to be intertwined. They kind of clash at some point. So I decided that I needed an exit plan. I needed to make a career move and do something for my life, for my family. And so I gave myself a window, a time window to make that jump. And I was going out that window with or without a plan. So one thing led to another. And one day I was watching YouTube, and I saw this guy walking on my beach. He was here in Maui talking about buying apartment buildings, and he said that he was coming to Maui. And so that piqued my interest, and that was my introduction to the multifamily mindset and Tyler Devereaux.
Nice.
And that's how I got here, and it's how I got on this path of syndication.
Awesome. Were you at the Peak Partnership event a couple months ago?
Yep, I was in Orlando. That was an awesome event. That was a lot of fun. I made some really good friends and connections. And I've already bought my ticket for next year.
Awesome. Yeah, I was there, but there were so many people there that if we met, I apologize. But I don't remember seeing you. But yeah, I think there's like 1,000 people at that one. So, but cool. Well, hey, that's I think that's how a lot of people, start, is they just feel like they need to make that change. And, he happened to put that ad right in front of you at the right time. But so just curious, what's the date? When are you going to be out?
I've actually been out for
oh, you already passed it then.
Yeah. So I've already exceeded that point. I'm out of there, and this is sort of what I'm doing 3/4 full time.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
How long did you give yourself to get out? Just out of curiosity.
I gave myself 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it got expedited a little bit, and which was okay. It was, I just really needed the push to really make that jump, and just a real culmination of everything coming together. When I saw Tyler's ad, I went to the first event, went to the next event, and I just really fell into place. I don't really believe in coincidence, but there was a lot of synchronicities there. So it was just like little signs here and there, just all over the place. Like, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to do.
Love it. Yeah, I had something similar. I gave myself 3 years, and my end date was actually the first day that I was eligible for the military retirement, and it was just like I was still active duty, still had, a couple of years, and, it was like, okay, this is when I'm done. And same thing, I was going to be out no matter what, and fortunately worked well. But anyway, let's see. Did we get your why yet? Man, I'm doing terrible these days. What's your why? How about that one? So
I came to discover my why is somewhat in an evolutionary process. When I, was at that period where I was going through that phase of self-development, which actually that's something I'll probably be doing for the rest of my life. But at that time, it was all about my situation in my life and my career. So it was really focused on financial freedom and having a choice of how to spend my time, use my time, put my time back in my family, and getting back to traveling. That was something I did as a kid. My mom was a flight attendant, so she took me to various locations throughout the world. I really loved that. And as I got older, that tapered off. I traveled less through school and then even less as an adult. So at that time, my real impetus was just escaping my career job. I had an exit window and I needed a means to get through that window. By the time I made that commitment to get into multifamily, it was more about my kids. I was very close with my kids, but I wasn't really spending as much quality. I was missing a lot of their life, it felt like.
Yeah.
As much as I was involved with them, I still felt like I'm missing out on watching them grow. And I want to put more of my time in with them, enrich their life experience and travel with them as well. The other day, I was listening to The Power of One. It's Ed Mylett's book.
Yep.
And I listened to a lot of audiobooks. And this is the second time through on this book. I missed this point the first time, but this time it really hit me. And it kind of culminates everything I've been talking about, which is I want to be that one. I want to be the one to show up and change everything for my family forever. Finances is one of those things, but there's also, the emotional level, the level of happiness and, how they think, and I see that how my success will lift all those around me. And so that's something that's really important to me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I've actually heard that book come up a couple of times on this podcast recently. So, maybe that's a clue that I should pick it up and start reading it. So, well, cool. Hey, well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. And Kaimi, we're going to, essentially hand you the mic now. So, Kaimi, we got Rebecca on the line. What do you want to ask her?
Yeah, so every time I meet an operator or, someone who's been invested and has, crossed the line and gotten their first deal, and they usually are into their more and more deals, I always want to hear the story of what their life was like before, how did you get there? What was your life like? And what were you going through getting there, getting to that first deal? So I just want to hear what that story was for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Again, I was working at the Naval Hospital as a psychologist, so a regular 9 to 5. And my husband, who was a surface warfare officer, as I'm imagining a lot of the audience knows what that is if they're listening to Brian, but he was in charge of a squadron at the time. So he could not leave San Diego to go figure out the syndications. But I think what you're really getting at is from 4:30 in the afternoon when I got off work to about 7 o'clock when my husband got home, I was on the phone underwriting, with my partner and underwriting or searching for deals. And that's pretty much nonstop. And even at work on my lunch breaks, I was calling insurance, calling tax people, calling the broker, talking to lenders. That's what my life looked like, because you have to be in it a lot to be able to see when each of those new buildings come to market. You've got to be really on top of it, because there's a small window of time, which is about a month, but it takes a lot of time in order to really do your due diligence even before, you put in your LOI. So again, really making sure the numbers are right and doing it again and again and again was I hope that answers your question about where I was, but taking that time and putting it aside for multifamily, you got to do that. And then, like I said, every other month was an event out in Texas. And so I would fly there, leave on a Friday night, come back on a Sunday night. And so, while other people are watching football, I'm trying to do my future.
Yeah.
So that is the commitment that it takes to do this business, I would say. It's not easy. And just like any dream, you have to show up and really be there. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of what I'm falling into or stepping into. I find myself doing that more and more. And so, yeah, that sort of does lead me that way. And, I heard you describing your first deal. And, as I'm looking at properties and starting to get the underwriting done, I feel like a lot of times I'm looking at a used car and I'm trying to sell this used car and try to get investors to buy into this used car, as opposed to the nice new car that's in the dealership lot. So heading into your first deal, how certain, I heard how good, it was and how it performed, but how certain were you that it was going to pan out that way. How did you feel about the deal when you got to that point where, okay, we're committed, let's go?
Okay, that's a really great analogy for me to use, because my building, the first one, was 1967 to 69. It was not new. So there definitely were a lot of scratches and the tires were low. I partnered, of course, with somebody with experience. And that is something that is essential for most syndicators for many reasons. First of all, just your credibility and the ability maybe to get an agency loan if that is the way that you're going to go. So I relied on him a lot. However, I didn't need to sell it so much as I was absolutely convinced it was great. And again, I'll go back to being based on the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms right next door to a school. There was a church right around the corner. Again, these are all things that we're looking for as a good deal. Also knowing that the rents were sub-market and that we could bring them up to market, knowing that they were below. So that made a lot of sense. I was secure in that the investment group that we were in, we had a lot of contacts, again, for the lenders, the insurance people, the tax people. So I felt secure knowing those numbers for my underwriting. And that made me feel secure, therefore confident in what I would be presenting to my investors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you said reminded me of something. I heard this is attributed to Henry Ford, but everyone who tells a story says it differently. But I think he boasted that he could answer any question within a certain amount of time. And some of the really smart people showed up at his office and asked him some hard questions. And he picked up the phone, made some phone calls, and hey, get this person in, get this person in, get this person in. You don't have to know everything. That's the moral of the story. You don't have to know everything. But if you're in this business, you have to have the subject matter experts, really close at your fingertips, and they can make up for a lot of things that you don't know yourself.
Yeah, I heard an analogy. I'm not sure, maybe we're talking about the same story, but he was in court defending himself, and they're asking him how he is qualified to build a car. And he was saying, I'm not. That's why I have all these people around me. Yeah.
Yep.
So, going into that first deal, and you submit your LOI, what was it like when it was accepted, and then to go from there to under contract? You're about to spend someone else's money, you're putting hard currency into the pot. What was that like, and was that stressful for you, or was it you kind of already knew this was going to work out the right way?
Yeah, so after running around with crazy happiness and coming off of cloud 9, then finally, yes, it's like, oh gosh, okay, I'm going to be in control of all these people's money. And again, that's where I leaned on the experience of my partner, who had already done it a number of times before me. So I also know that I am a person of integrity and transparency, and that I was definitely going to do my very best. So I know my best has done me well in the past, and that I had every intention to do well for these people and wouldn't let this thing fail. It's a position to take very seriously, and I'm honored when people will invest with me. And I do like to have, even now, my hands in all of the asset management so that I know where not every dollar, but most every dollar is going. So yeah, it can be scary, but you can do it, especially if you have somebody with experience on your side.
I remember getting the email saying that first property was under contract, and I did a fist pump. I'm like, yeah, I was at work in the Pentagon, it's like, yes. I looked around and I said that out loud, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay, but after the euphoria wore off, it was like, oh my gosh,
Now
we've got an apartment under contract. I mean, up until then, it was always, putting in offers, getting no, putting in offers. It's like, this is new ground. What now? That was really what came through my mind next. But, fortunately, like Rebecca said, I had people with experience in my corner. I was in a mentorship group, Kaimi, like you are right now. I just reached out to the right people and said, we got it under contract. What now? And I had like 4 different people send me due diligence checklists, and it was just like, okay, okay, I got some checklists. We got this now. So yeah, that's how I felt, what now after being excited.
Yeah. So I'm glad you started talking about the investors, because I want to go back to something you said earlier about, when you're coming into this, you had that scarcity mindset and you were, working with people, trying to overcome their scarcity mindset to become investors. So how did you navigate that? How did you do that?
By educating the investor. So again, if there were people who felt like me, let's say, and worry about, even though I've done great, I'm a doctor, I should feel really secure in my retirement. I still, from childhood don't. And so there must be some other people who feel like me. And there are lots of people who just want to have, like you, be there for their children, have a nicer life than even their retirement, their 401k can bring. So educating all your friends, family, and potential investors about what you're doing now, multifamily, and how it can be an incredible investment is key in helping you fundraise and or have investors learn later on.
Yeah, because I've had some tough conversations with people that they've made investments in other things similar and they've gotten burned. They've lost their money. They didn't see a penny of it in return. So I have, with those people, I have a big hurdle to cross, and without really any kind of game plan to address that, I just kind of let that go. And so I guess that is what I need to do, is basically just bring this model to their attention, is just educate them, you say.
Yeah. And I'll just say, as far as that goes, they might not be ready for it now. The people that you're talking about that have been burned with it. I've had several people that, I've been doing this for about 5 years. I've had several people that didn't invest with me with deal number 1, 2, 3, or 4 that eventually will, and a lot of it is just, keep in contact with them. I mean, if there are people that you know and like, you're obviously going to keep in contact with them. But when they start seeing your life change and they start seeing what you're able to do, all of a sudden they're going to be interested. Like, wow, whatever he's doing is working. So, 100% agree with what Rebecca said. Part of it's the education piece, but some people, because of life experiences, aren't going to accept it. But just keep on doing what you're doing, and eventually you'll attract more and more people.
All right. So Rebecca, with your first property, what surprises came up? Was there any that, like, I wasn't expecting this, and how am I going to fix this? Or how do I deal with that? Like what came up in that whole process?
Okay, I'm trying to think of it with my first property. Luckily, it was a pretty easy property. What I can say, I guess, if we think about that, is we knew that the boiler was going to it was very old, let's say. And again, because it was 1967 built, and we didn't expect it though to go out within the first couple of days. And so I'm so lucky to have, again, my Navy husband who knows all the systems of the ship. He could relate to, oh, here's a boiler that needs to be fixed. He was out there with the guys, being able to figure out what size do we need, what pieces and pipes and stuff needs to be restored along the way. So he's my secret weapon in many ways. So that was a surprise, though, at the very first, because maybe I should have said this before, is because the people needed to have, their hot water as well as the heat at that time. And so we needed that right away, because if you don't have, of course, cool in the summer and warm in the winter here in Texas, you need to put all those people into a hotel. Okay. Yes. As an owner, you need to do that. So we needed to work very, very quickly to get that thing replaced within a couple of days.
That makes it even more expensive if you got to relocate everybody.
So we didn't want to do that. So luckily that was my very first surprise.
Yeah.
As a new person.
And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people, you don't see boilers and chillers, in the area that I'm investing in, but I know a lot of people that won't touch the properties with boilers and chillers because when they break, it's really expensive.
It was $30,000 to replace it, but luckily we knew that it was on the skids, so we had that underwritten already.
Yeah.
We just didn't know it was going to be within a few days.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know when, it's like when
Mhm.
you come into a place with a 30-year-old furnace or whatever,
Mhm.
you're going to replace it. It's just, when's it going to break, or do you be a little proactive and try to replace it first? But yeah, first couple of days, that's a little too quick. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
want that to happen. So
Right out the gate.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that would never have crossed my mind. And then to have that kind of a contingency and that being the resolution to have to go and put people in a hotel, that would never have crossed my mind. And so that actually brings me to my next question, which is, I just saw a video recently where someone posted and they described the people in our business as obstacle course professionals, and I love that. And they said this business is just one obstacle after another. And if you don't enjoy doing that, I don't suggest you stay in this business. So when I heard that, I wasn't really discouraged. It didn't put me off because in my former life, the career I had before, I did a lot of planning. I was very proactive. The type of work I did, I had to know that obstacles would come up. And so, before I walked out the door, I had plans B and C in my pocket. However, I knew the terrain, I knew how to navigate, and I had the tools to do it. But now I find myself in this new business model, a new world, really. And it feels like a cross between feeling my way around in the dark and reinventing the wheel. So, like for instance, you brought that up. That's something I would have never imagined that I would have to do that. So how do I navigate these obstacles without really knowing the tools that are going to be available to me or even how to use them, really?
Well, again, that's where multifamily is a team sport. And so by working with people, maybe hopefully who have more experience than you in the beginning is a great way to start, because since we've been through it, we'll help you through it. So for example, on a recent acquisition here in Dallas, that was exactly why Warren and I got on the project, is because the other folks had only had one acquisition before. So Warren and I come on after having multiple acquisitions, and sure enough, fire. Okay, fire happens. Okay, that's really crummy for these new people. Luckily, we're here, boots on the ground, and able to help them through this construction sort of nightmare and insurance nightmare. It's not a lot of fun. All you can do is just go with it and know that you have people that you can ask. You're in another investment group. I understand you're in this group, and that is your power. You have Brian and I now, and if we're only a phone call away. I think in this business, a lot of times there is more people out there to help you and give you support than in many other businesses. So again, we're there for you. I know it feels like you are walking completely in the dark, but time and experience will give you a lot of help, especially if you do it with a group.
Yeah. And that's, choosing your partners. And I mean, Rebecca said it, a couple of times earlier, when you come into your first deal, you usually need somebody with experience to help you qualify for the loan. But find somebody with experience that's going to stick around and help you. Some people are very happy to sign on the loan and never talk with you again and just, collect their fee. But, find somebody who's going to be able to shine that flashlight, while you feel like you're feeling around in the dark, or even better, flip on the light switch. But, and there are people like that who will do it. Sounds like Rebecca's done that, a couple of times, and, I've done it a couple of times as well. So, find the right people, and it makes this apartment investing world a lot easier. But well, we are about out of time, so thanks to both of you. I think that was a great discussion. One last question for each of you before we go. Rebecca, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Oh, great. Yes. Going to starboardequity.com is where you will learn the most about myself and Warren. And of course, you could be found on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Awesome. And I'll put links to your profile into the show notes. So if anybody wants to check Starboard Equity out, or Rebecca or Warren, we'll have those links in there. Kaimi, same question for you.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I have a Facebook page as well under my name. My website is under construction. And when that comes online, it'll be in the right place.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.